The LA Clippers' regular season is over, and different players have had different levels of seasons. In this episode, going into the playoffs, I am going to look at each player on the roster and grade their season, just the regular season, as the slate clears and we got a fresh new start in a new season, the postseason. But the regular season grades for your LA Clippers on today's Locked On Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, in my 18th season as a Clipper fan. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod and subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, where I went live after the first day of play-in games and will continue to go live as the playoffs continues, or should I say begins, because that was just the play-in games. We haven't gotten to the playoffs just yet. Locked On Clippers is free and available on all your favorite podcasting platforms, including YouTube. And I want you to comment on today's pinned question after I make my grades. Which one do you disagree with the most? I want to hear from you. But in this episode, I'm going to be talking about the grades, starting with first segment, it's going to be the starters. Then the second, the reserves, the bench. And then Benchwarmers, coach, GM, that kind of stuff. So before I start, I want to say this episode is brought to you by HelloFresh. All right, let's get into it. Kawhi Leonard, first up. I'm going to give him an A- for the regular season, and here's why. He just didn't play enough games. I know a lot of that's not in his control. I think if I had to be critical of him, I'd say there were games like at Philly, home against Atlanta, just at Indiana. Those are just a couple off the top of my head where he could have closed better, in my opinion. But he's also coming off an ACL tear, so we're taking it with a grain of salt. That being said, I think A- is fair, because if he had played 60-plus games, that 60-game threshold that I had set before the season for him and Paul George, I'd give him an A+, because he's been even better than I expected coming off that injury. Like, straight up, he's been even better. But he hasn't. He played 52 games. He missed 30. And as I said, if Kawhi misses 30 and Paul George misses over that 22 game, plays under 60 games, then the Clippers won't be a top 3 seed. They'll probably be 4, 5, or 6. And that's exactly where they ended up in the 5 seed. But that being said, there were other factors, including the performances of individual players, obviously the coaching staff, the roster, all that could have changed things. But Kawhi Leonard gets an A- from me. I already talked about his stats in depth in the last episode. 24 points for him, 6.5 rebounds, and 4 assists to go along with 1.4 steals a game. And his efficiency is probably the most eye-popping thing. 51% from the field, 41.6% from 3, and 87% from the line. So 51, 42, 87 splits. Listen, I made a prediction for his stats before the season, and it was not that good. So Kawhi Leonard gets an A- for me. It would be A+ if he played that 60 games. He did not, so he's going to be an A-. Because I still think as the number one option, your star player playing under 60 games, you don't win the championship like that. It's never happened. Paul George, I'm going to give him a B+. Only because there were enough games with Kawhi Leonard out where I think Paul George could have averaged more points per game than him. I think Paul, for all his great games, has almost as many underwhelming games. And he's still a star. I still think he's a star and deserves to be one. But there are certain things that Paul George does in terms of the timeliness of his mistakes, poor shots, careless with the ball kind of things that don't go on your stat sheet. You don't tell how crucial those turnovers are. Those games that he doesn't shoot 20-plus shots when Kawhi doesn't play. Those games are excruciatingly frustrating. So I'd give him a B+. Because he's still a beast. He's still one of the best players in the NBA. But I think also the closing thing doesn't just apply to Kawhi. There were games that Paul George could close and didn't. So I'm giving Paul George a B+. And also, he played under the 60-game threshold. So as far as Kawhi, overall, I'm not really disappointed with his individual performance. Paul George, in the big picture, I'm not. But yes, there's a decent amount where I am. How about Russell Westbrook? I think he just got here, so it's hard. I'm going to give him a B so far. I think a B is a positive grade. I mean, I was a B student in school all my life. I think I ended up okay. But Russell Westbrook, I think it's a B because he's just improved the team. Now, the record doesn't really show that 11-10 with him, but he has helped in ways. We lacked a great passer. We lacked a guy that can get to the rim. We lacked a vocal leader. We lacked an emotional leader, and it seems like we've gotten that. So I think Russ, in his role, has been really solid. He's been better defensively than I expected in more games, where I think he's been decent defensively than poor. I think he's been awesome on the offensive glass, on the glass in general. Patrick Beverley was a great rebounder for the point guard position, but this is one of the best point guard rebounders, I should say, that I've ever seen. And when you see it on a nightly basis, it's definitely stands out. And his jumper, hasn't been that bad. His mid-range looks like he's coming back since he's got those fingers taped. His fingers don't have that tape anymore. He's shooting 36% from three as a Clipper, and he's shooting 49% from the field. He was shooting like 42% with the Lakers this year. So I'll take that all day. And plus, the best thing about Russ has been his attitude so far, his willingness to be benched at the end of a game, his willingness to only play 23 minutes and not complain at all, have a smile at the end of the day. That's been the ultimate joy of having Russ, is just how willing he's been to do everything and anything that Ty Lue asks of him. So I'll give him a B. Maybe, you know what? I'm going to upgrade that. Let's go B+ because of that. If it's a Zubats, I give him an A. If it's a Zubats an A. I know a lot of people are not going to like that. Maybe they think I'm biased to Zoo. I think if you had said before the season, Zubats, even not averaging 30 minutes a game, is going to shoot 52%, and he is going to average a double-double. 11 points, 9.9 rebounds. That really makes me angry that he doesn't technically get the credit for the double-double average. But if you give him one more minute a game, I guarantee you he's getting 0.1 more rebound a game. He averaged a double-double in my eyes. That rounds up. Just like Jokic basically averaged a triple-double. And Oscar Robertson basically did it 4 times. But Zoo was awesome. And in the beginning of the season, the only reason our defensive rating isn't below 20 is because of the start that Zoo had to the season. He anchored us without Kawhi Leonard, and obviously in games without both Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. In one of those games, he had a 31-29 game. I think Zoo, on both ends of the floor, has been great this season. I think he has taken steps, whereas last year or 2 years ago, I'm saying Zoo should get more post touches, but that's coming from a guy who likes post game and misses it in the NBA. Most people are like, we have better options. Now everybody seems to be on board with me with that because he's shown that he's better in the post than we thought. Or should I say he has improved in the post. We knew he had a right-handed jump hook, but this season he has shown a left-handed jump hook. He's added that to his arsenal. And I say this all the time. Pau Gasol literally showed you, and obviously there's a lot more to Pau Gasol's game, but when you have jump hooks with both hands and you get decent enough post position, you cannot be guarded one-on-one. You can't. It's too hard to guard. It's the same as having turnarounds over both shoulders, but for bigs. Zubac should get the ball more. If anything, and in terms of the whole, he gets played off the floor on D and all that, that's been very minimal. Most people that say that don't really know about pick and roll defense. But I can't really say other starters because the Clippers starting lineup has been in such flux all year, but I guess I'm going to go with the starting lineup that it is now. So there's only one starter left, and that's Eric Gordon. And I'll give him a B- since he's come. I think he's had just as many good games as bad. I think he has been a little better than I expected in those good games and just as I expected in those bad games. And I think that the good is how much better he can be defensively than I expected. Obviously, that game against Devin Booker was big time. I think he was good against Toronto. And his range really adds another element to the Clipper offense in the sense that you really not only got to respect his shot, but it's easier for Kawhi, Paul George, and them to have kickouts to guys that are feet behind the line, and it makes the defense's job tougher, makes his recovery tougher. So I'm going to go with B- for Eric Gordon, but if you want to give him a C+ because his bad games are pretty careless and bad, then I don't blame you either. But that's a starting lineup. Coming up, going to be talking about the bench guys. A lot of ones to get through. The deepest team in the league, of course, as I still believe. But before I do that, I got to tell you about the Ultimate Pro Basketball GM app. It's the coolest game I've played in a long time. And, I've always had the dream of being the president of basketball operations for the Clippers, wanting to be a GM. And considering a lot of people on Twitter, I think that you want to be a GM too. So you got to download the Ultimate Basketball GM app. The game allows you to manage every strategic aspect of a franchise, playing through seasons, leading your franchise and fans to glory as you build a dynasty or have a team in purgatory. In this simulation, you're responsible for dealing with challenging personalities, hiring the right coaches and assistants, trading and training players, making draft picks, navigating your franchise through free agency, and then some, the draft, everything you want to know, everything that is the responsibility of a GM. Locked On Clippers listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On in the game store, so make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit probasketballgm.com, scan the code, or look it up on the app stores. That's probasketballgm.com. Ultimate Basketball GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, so the Clippers bench players, let's talk about them. And by the way, I think I talked about the stats in the last episode with certain guys, but Paul George, 24.6 boards and 5 assists this year. Very solid stats. Shot 46% from the field and 37% from 3 and 87 from the line. Pretty great splits. Not everybody can shoot like Kawhi in terms of efficiency, but Paul George still efficient in his own right. Let's start with who I think is the sixth man of the year, Norman Powell, or should have been the sixth man of the year before he got hurt. I got Norm finishing with, I'm going to go with an A- because he started out the season really slow, but I think when he went to the bench, he realized that his role was to be a sixth man of the year candidate, which I said I thought he should be before the season started. We tried him in the starting lineup, and I remember when he said, I want to be the starting shooting guard on this team, I want to be an all-star, he was aiming way too high. Norm's a really solid player, but he's not an all-star. He's a very good role player. He can get you buckets instantly, put on some good rim pressure, play decent defense. At best, he's a decent defender. He's not the best laterally, but he's not horrible laterally when he's in the mood. And he's also pretty strong. He can't get overpowered like that. As far as rotations, off-ball stuff, I think he's not very good. But again, when he's engaged, he's passable. And I think that's why he helped win the championship. Even though he played less than every main player in that rotation, he still played 15 minutes a game on a championship-winning team, and that's not easy because not a lot of people can do that. And Norm has only gotten better since then. This season, he averaged 17 points a game. He was our third leading scorer, just like I predicted before the season. In other departments, though, he doesn't really do much. 3 rebounds, 2 assists. It's really the ways that he scores that helps the Clippers. He's not a very good passer. He often gets caught under the rim, and when he turns the ball over, a lot of times it's because he jump passes, leaves his feet. As a kid, you're taught that you got to stay on your floor to pass because if you jump and you don't like the pass you want to throw, you get caught in the air. It's a traveler turnover. But overall, Norman Powell, in his role, he had a stretch before the injury where he was lights out. And I think these last 3 games before the playoffs begin, he's been awesome. And he gives me optimism that we could potentially beat the Suns because he can play at a high level. So I got him at an A-. Because it's all about, by the way, so when I have Zubats at an A, for any of you guys that are going to be like, how can you have Zubats at an A, but Kawhi's the best player on the team by a good amount, and he's at an A-? These are all relative to the expectation. I want to make that very clear. These are all relative to the expectation that I set, since I'm the one doing this, and this is just my opinion. It's not facts. This is just the expectation that I set for these guys. So you can disagree. As I said, in the pinned comment, I want you to tell me which one you disagree with more. And by the way, if you're wondering, what does this have to do with the Suns series? Listen, I released an episode on that yesterday. I released an episode, briefly talking about it after we played them. I'm releasing a crossover episode on Thursday with Brendan Clean of Locked On Suns. And on Friday, I'm going to go in even more depth schematically about everything. So get ready. We got some great content. You will have no shortage of us talking about the Suns series leading up to it on Locked On Clippers, I can assure you. Next, Terrence Mann. I'm going to give him a B+, and here's why. I think Terrence has gotten better. I think that is reflected upon or reflected by his 3-point percentage. Last year, he averaged 11 points a game. This year, he's averaging 9 points a game. Last year, he shot 36.5% from three. This year, he shot 39% from three. Last year, he shot 48% from the field. This season, he shot 52% from the field. So 52, 39, and 78 splits are not that bad. He's clearly made some strides shooting the ball. And also, 2 seasons in a row, Terrence Mann, 81 games played. You got to love it. You got to love his availability, knock on wood. I mean, with the Clippers team, you need someone like that you're going to be able to rely on to play every game. And not only that, he plays hard every game. That's what I love. He got a career high in starts this year with 36, but he didn't even play as many minutes as last year for obvious reasons with Kawhi and Paul George coming back and the addition of Westbrook. 23 minutes a game this year, 28.6 last season. I got Terrence at a B+ because of 2 reasons. One, that's not even his fault. Ty Lue didn't play him enough. He could have been an A- by having a bigger role with this team, but Ty Lue hurts him here. And, you can say that's unfair because it's not actually anything that he can control. But the main reason why I'm giving him a B+ is because I think that as good as Terrence Mann is defensively and he looks better on this team, I think he's a good defender. I think he looks great because the rest of our team is average guarding the ball, and that's being nice about it. I think there's been a lot of times, and I've been saying this for months, I don't know how many other podcasts will say this because I'm actually the biggest Terrence Mann propagandist on the internet, in my opinion, with any sort of platform. I mean, the guy, as I said, I knew of him before he was on the Clippers. I knew people that actually knew him because I went to UMass and he's from Lowell, Massachusetts. So for everything to work out the way it did and me to meet his mom this season at a game, like Terrence Mann hearing a soundbite of me talking about how he should have gotten more minutes in the bubble and responding to my friend, like all these different things. I don't stand anybody, but Terrence Mann, like you can argue, I give him more leeway than everybody else. But I've been talking about his screen navigation for 2 months now, that he's been getting destroyed on screens too easily lately. And in the last game, you saw several Suns players score on him one-on-one. He needs to be a deterrent. He needs to be a good defender that stays in front in the Suns series if we want to win. And because I think he's been a little underwhelming in some games, I put him at a B+. Bones Highland, I would give him an A. He's been better than I expected. He is a better passer than I thought. He's a better defender than I was advertised. He's had a great attitude. He's been an upgrade over Reggie. He adds rim pressure. He adds pace. He's a great shooter. I mean, I got to give Bones an A. I mean, yeah, he's not the strongest defensively, but he has good hands. He's played the passing lanes well. And I think when he's engaged, again, he can be passable. But against high-level competition, when they know he's not a very good defender, that makes things tough. In the play-in game I watched on Tuesday, I saw Ty Lue, Jordan McLaughlin, Trae Young, Max Strus, and Kevin Love and Cody Zeller. All these players were targeted in pick and roll and had their limited minutes cut as a result, except for Trae Young because he's that good. Ty Lue more so the foul trouble. But the point is, guys get hunted in the playoffs. And Bones Highland will be tested if he does get those minutes. But in terms of regular season, I got to go with an A. Mason Plumlee, I'm going to give him a B-. The reason why I say B- is because I think given his role, I think he's still good. I think he still does a good job of finishing. I think he's a great rebounder. I think he does have the occasional moment where he can bring up the ball and do something good. But every so often, or should I say every other time he does that, he'll turn the ball over or just make me nervous, losing the ball or almost losing the ball. And his biggest thing is he's a worse defender than I imagined. That's why he's a B-. You could also argue he's a C+. He has terrible timing. For a guy that has good bounce and is a better lob threat than Zoo, he does not get off the ground. He doesn't play angles nearly as well as Zoo. He just gets caught flat-footed a lot. So that's my criticism of Mason. And then Nico Batum. Oh, Nico's starting. I forgot about Nico in that starting lineup. What was I thinking? Nico to me gets a B- as well. I think that's being a little generous too. You could have put him at a C+. I think Nico does his job. I think he's showed some signs of aging this year, and he's been very streaky with his shot. He'll have games, a stretch of games where he lights out from 3, then other games where he just cannot make a 3. Mostly all of his shots are 3s. But the one thing about Nico that I don't think really has taken that much of a step down is his defense. He's still really solid defensively. We're 5-2 with him in the starting lineup at the end of the season, and I think we're a better team with him. He has a high basketball IQ. He does all those little things. He averaged only 6 points this year, but he played 78 games. So you got to love that. From a guy that's 34 years old to be playing 78 games, that's just awesome. He only missed 5 games in 2021, and he missed 23 games last year. So the fact that we actually had 42 wins with Nico missing 23 games is amazing in itself. But he shot 39% from 3 this year, which is still really, really good. 42% from the field, so last 2 seasons with the Clippers, he's shot 46%. So his field goal percentage dropped by 4. But his 3 ball is about the same. He's averaging 2 less points. He's averaging 3 less minutes. So I go with a B-. I think Nico in the end will still be good for the Clippers in the playoffs and very important. And then the last guy, Robert Covington. Can I even rank him? I'm gonna go with a B- with him too, because Ty Lue doesn't play him. He's good when he plays. He didn't start the season very well, shooting a lot of ill-advised threes, and obviously being put in positions to be the small ball 5 and getting torched out there. But overall, I think he's been good when he plays. And even though he hasn't been as good as last season, I'm going to give him a B-. But coming up, going to be talking about the coach, the GM, and the players that are out of the picture now. And you know who those are. Going to be talking about that coming up. But before I do that, I got to tell you about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Grand slams, no-hitters, and double plays are back, and there's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet. Up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. At sign up, place your first bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. So don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. I'm going with the Toronto Raptors money line and the New Orleans Pelicans money line on Wednesday to win both of their play-in games. And then on Friday, I am going with the Heat money line to win against the winner of the Bulls-Raptors. And I am going with... I can't honestly make a prediction about the Wolves game. All I'll say is Anthony Edwards is scoring over 20 points in that one. I promise he's going to bounce back with something. FanDuel. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, the official FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. All right, time to close this baby out. Before we do that, I got to tell you about the bench. I'm sorry, the guys that are no longer here, the coach and the GM. Let's go with the guys that are no longer here in the Benchwarmers. I'm going to do the Benchwarmers really quick. Moussa Diabate in his first season, I'll give him a C+. I think that may sound harsh, but he showed me that he's not yet ready for NBA rotation minutes on a championship contending team. He's going to need more reps, and he might need to play a lot of more minutes in the G League again next year. I think the biggest thing for Moussa this offseason is going to be to develop some touch around the basket and to get stronger. I think those are the things for him. Jason Preston. Finally got to see him play a little bit this year. I will give him... Is that even applicable to give him anything? I'm going to give him a C+. The reason why I give him a C, and that sounds... Actually, you know what? B-. Because this season I learned that Jason Preston is an NBA player. I know. I think he's good. He's a good passer. He's got a good feel for the game. He's not a bad shooter by any means either. And I like his little runner, his little floater coming off screen, snaking the pick and roll. I think the problem with Preston, the reason why I give him a C+ is... Every time he came in the game, it's because the Clippers had thrown in the towel. So I don't like seeing him on the floor. But I actually think he's an NBA player, and I didn't know that before the season. So I'll give him a C+. Moses Brown. B-. I think he was everything I expected. But I didn't actually expect him to make any differences in any wins. And he did do that. He did. I mean, of course, he hurt us in losses too. He was slow-footed. He just couldn't move out there well enough at the NBA level to anchor a defense. But considering he was better than I expected and actually contributed to us winning some games, albeit against not very good teams, I'll give him a B-. The Brewmaster, Amir Coffey. I'm going to go with a C on this one. I love the Brewmaster. I think he definitely had a worse season this year, playing in 50 games, only starting 9 and only averaging 12.5 minutes. But the Brewmaster, his splits were not good when he played. That was 27.5% from three. This is a guy, I'm saying 27.5% from three. This is a guy who shot 38% from deep last year in 69 games, 30 games that he started for us. So, and the main thing with the Brewmaster, it's not his fault. He just didn't get enough playing time. So he's not in any rhythm. So take those numbers with a grain of salt. He didn't just become a way worse three-point shooter this year. That was just this. He barely played. He really did. So a C might even be harsh for the Brewmaster. But when he was called upon, he didn't play as well as when he was called upon last year. How about Brandon Boston Jr.? I mean, the guy barely played. 22 games. He only started once. I'm going to go with a C+ for BBJ. Just not much to go off. Actually, you know what? B-, because when he plays, I still like him, honestly. He has good length in the passing lanes. He's a better defender than people give him credit for. He adds athleticism to our team. I thought he had games where he was more efficient this year when he played. But, again, with Preston, with Musa, with Brandon, we're not really in Amir. We're not really ranked. It's just I'm kind of BSing on these, But how about not ranking Xavier Moon? Sorry. Hasn't played enough. 4 games. All right. The guys that departed. Reggie Jackson. I got to give him a D. He just fell off a cliff. Looked older. Couldn't guard. Couldn't contribute to the game when he wasn't hitting shots. Just couldn't accept his role, whether PG and Kawhi were on the court or not. He over-dribbled. He took bad shots. And he didn't accept that he was going to get less minutes. I'm sorry, Reggie. I really love the guy. Marcus Morris, C-, because I'll only give him not a D because he started the season so well. But after that, it's been all downhill. Same thing as Reggie. Can't contribute when he's not hitting shots. Doesn't rebound. Doesn't really defend very well. He's just gotten progressively worse. I feel like we've just kind of run him into the ground. And his presence on the team feels redundant, as I said before the season even began. So I'm going to give him a C-. And then Luke Kennard. I'm going to give him a C+. The reason why I'm harsh on his ranking is because, I think he had a drop-off defensively this year. I think he was improving every year defensively, but once he started getting injured, he dropped off, he hesitated, and he totally lost his confidence at the end of his Clipper tenure. But that was because he wasn't playing every game. That was mainly on Ty Lue. And now you see in Memphis, he's back to shooting lights out like he was last year. Shocker. And what sucks is Eric Gordon is going to be better for this year's playoffs. But going forward, Luke Kennard is the better player, and we let him go. Now he's going to have his best years with Memphis, a team that's going to be competing with us for a while and has been competing with us for the better part of 10 years with a different iteration of their team and a different iteration of our team. Then the final guy, John Wall, I got to give him a C-. He was about what I expected. If anything, he was quicker than I expected. But he was worse defensively than I expected. He was lazy. The biggest thing with John was his attitude. I mean, he wanted to start. He thought he was still that guy. He didn't do what Russ did. Russ is trying to show people that he can still contribute to winning teams. John Wall wanted to show people that he was still John Wall. And that got in the way. Even with Kawhi and Paul out there, he would kind of just bring up the ball. And it felt like he thought they wanted him to do what Russ does. But at the end of the day, Russ has understood that more often than not, with Kawhi and Paul, all you need to do is give them the ball on kind of an entry pass or them coming off screens. Not you running high pick and roll. I think that's the difference. John Wall wanted to run high pick and roll all the time. Russ has not been doing that as much. He'll get it in the post and work, or he'll throw it to Kawhi and Paul and then move, cut, or offensive rebound. I think Russ has really shown why he was always better than John Wall in that sense. And the final guys, the front office, Lawrence Frank. I'll give him a C in this season, and this is the reason why. I think he's done great overall as the general manager of the Clippers, the president of basketball operations, and this can go on Ty Lue's shoulders as well. Starting the season with no backup big besides Moses Brown was a complete miscalculation. Signing John Wall, and again, if your argument here is that this is just pushed by the players and the coach that wants a point guard so much, they gave in. They gave in at the end of the day on all the moves. So he has to have some blame. John Wall, we didn't need to lose Hartenstein. Because I think, honestly, Isaiah is better than Mason. He is. He's been playing better at the second half of the season for New York, too. So I would say if we could have paid Isaiah the taxpayers mid-level exception, no John Wall, then Luke Kennard will probably still be a Clipper, because then you just have Norman Powell and Luke Kennard coming off the bench, and now you don't have the 3-guard conundrum that really hurt the Clippers this season. So that could have helped. And then, I think you made good trades at the deadline. The Kennard one a little questionable, but other than that, good moves. Then you succumb to Westbrook. Even though I love Russ so far, it hurt initially. There's no denying that it hurt initially. 5 games in a row we lost, and that was because we brought a new player in. Roles changed yet again. So C for Lawrence Frank. And then for Ty Lue, I'm going to give him a D. Actually, you know what? I'm going to give him a C-. The reason why I say C- is because he just hasn't had a lot. It's been hard. Too much depth. Kawhi and Paul being out so much. Norm even being out. It's been hard. He's got no continuity to work with, really. And the medical staff has clearly frustrated him at times. And that pisses him off, and that pisses me off. And I think he deserves a little bit of leeway for that. But overall, C-. He's had a poor season. He's picking favorites. Took too long for Reggie and Marcus Morris to not play anymore. The Clippers have been poor in late game execution, which I put more on the players than him. The defense has been poor because he elects to play non-defensive minded lineups. A lot of times, the 3-guard lineups with no good guard defenders out there, your best guard defender being Norman Powell, and no center was insane to think he would even attempt. And he did that many times. Not closing with Terrence Mann. And instead closing with Reggie Jackson and Marcus Morris Sr., penciling him in to close the games was insane. He's just had a rough year. But he can undo it all. And all the players that I said didn't do well enough, the ones that are playing at least, they have a chance to undo it all. But I think overall, individually, the moral of the story from all this is that the Clipper players, individually, most of them have not had bad seasons. It's been the collective. And that's why you can't look at teams on paper. You got to watch them play. And that's why the Clippers are the 5 seed. Because they haven't played good basketball all year. They've had stretches of 5-6 games at a time where they play decently. 10 out of the last 12 games before Russ came, all that. They weren't even beating that good of teams. But at the end of the day, we'll see what happens here. Let me know which rating you disagreed with, which grade you disagree with the most. I will be doing an episode with Brendan Clean of Locked On Suns on Thursday. And then on Friday, going deep into the X's and O's of what both sides need to do to limit certain players and just how things are going to look from an X's and O's standpoint. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers your first listen today. Now make your second listen Game to Game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, because I will be going live after every night of playoff basketball. So electric on Tuesday night after the Laker game. Staples Center sounded rocking. And I also want to say, for the first time since 2013, all 3 Staples Center teams, of course, besides the Sparks, are in the playoffs. The Kings, the Clippers, and the Lakers. It's a great time to be an LA sports fan, baby. Clipper fans, get your tickets, and I'm going to be getting my tickets. Game 1, Sunday. Locked On Clippers. Every day. For the most part. The age-old proverb continues. Go Clippers.